Now Jack is only a level 1 member. At 4 in the morning he wakes up. What he picks up is not a weapon, but a stiff bristled brush. His job is to clean toilets and run to the store to buy cigarettes for senior members. He is not even considered a real gang member yet, just a runner. The older members ignore him completely. In their eyes, he is nothing more than free labor. He sleeps crammed in a room with 5 other men. His body aches all over, but he never dares to complain. He simply listens, works in silence, and waits for a chance to prove his worth. Jack is a smart man, and he quickly rises to a junior leadership position. He no longer scrubs floors. His new work brings money faster. He organizes card games, clears out warehouses, goes to construction sites, and supervises the use of trucks owned by their company. If rival gangs dare to operate in his territory, he drives them out. He begins to feel his own weight in the organization. He buys a sharp suit, wears sunglasses even at night, and now has a group of young men under his command. But the money he earns is not his. Every week, he must hand over large amounts of cash to the higher-ups. That is the rule. Even stealing a single dollar is considered betrayal, and traitors are punished. Jack now has income, but he has also become a target. The police recognize his face. Whenever trouble happens, he is always the one arrested, while the real bosses remain safe at home. Time passes. He is no longer running through the streets. Through skill and loyalty, he becomes part of the core structure. He may have spent 3 years in prison, keeping silent the entire time, never speaking a word to the police, proving his loyalty through action. Now Jack becomes a mentor to newcomers, their senior figure. He teaches them the rules of the gang, how to show proper respect, and how to intimidate shop owners without raising their voices. The second-tier members hand their money to him. He counts it, keeps his share, and passes the rest upward. He now controls his own territory, a bar, and several casinos. He becomes a manager, but still must act with caution. He is still part of the organization. When rival gangs invade his territory, the boss does not call a lawyer, he calls Jack. Jack must make sure everyone knows who is in charge. He picks up an iron rod and gathers his strongest men to respond. He earns respect, but still handles the dirty work that must remain unseen. Later, Jack becomes a deputy within the gang, assisting senior leaders. He no longer fights in alleys. Instead, he sits in an office, replacing baseball bats with a laptop. He finally understands that this so-called family is nothing more than a business. He manages legitimate-looking companies, transport firms, waste disposal companies. To outsiders, they appear normal. Only he knows they are shells for laundering dirty money. He also handles logistics. When the boss attends a funeral, Jack plans the route, arranges armored vehicles, and positions bodyguards. If everything goes smoothly, no one notices him. If the boss is late, the blame falls entirely on him. He carries 2 phones, one for legitimate work, one for gang affairs. He never mixes them. He becomes the core of the entire organization. Through capability alone, Jack rises to headquarters deputy director, overseeing the office and managing a team of lawyers. When his men are arrested, he never panics. He simply makes a call and sends legal teams to retrieve them from the police. At the same time, he becomes the gang's cleaner, not of bodies but of secrets. He burns documents, wipes data, and ensures the police can never trace anything back to the boss. Standing on the balcony of a high-rise apartment, he overlooks the entire city. Countless lights stretch into the distance. He points toward the north and says, "Next is there." 3 years later, he finally steps into the edge of the core circle and becomes the assistant to the second-in-command. The second-in-command is the gang's number 2, responsible for conflict and enforcement. Jack becomes his right-hand man. He now controls a large region, with 5 or 6 teams under his command. They report money to him, and he passes it up the chain. His main mission is expansion. He studies the map and sets his eyes on a weakly controlled port city. But he is no longer the brute force newcomer. He now uses strategy. Instead of sending armed men, he sends businessmen. He buys rival businesses, acquires their debts, and slowly squeezes them out by cutting off their income. When they are completely cornered, he sends an invitation for a meeting. He sits with the rival boss in a quiet tea house. He pours him a cup of tea and says with a calm smile, "Join us or disappear." Most choose to join. Jack takes the territory without firing a single bullet. He drives imported cars, wears suits more expensive than his first car ever was. He holds real power yet remains cautious. The second-in-command watches him closely. Loyalty is demanded at all times. If Jack becomes too popular or earns too much, he will be seen as a threat. He can rise, but never shine too brightly. On his desk lies a city map and 3 brand new black pistols, never used in any crime. Jack becomes the operations chief. Negotiations are over. Rival gangs attack his territory in the west, killing 2 of his men. Now he must respond. But he no longer pulls the trigger himself. His life is too valuable. 3 young men stand before him, nervous. He hands them guns and a photo of a target, a man eating at a steakhouse on 3rd Street. He simply says, "Go. If you fail, don't come back." They leave. Jack waits quietly and turns on a police scanner. He can hear all police communications. Soon, a report comes in. A shooting on 3rd Street. All units are dispatched. He checks the time. His men have only 3 minutes to escape before being surrounded. His phone vibrates. The team leader whispers, "We're trapped. A patrol car is blocking the bridge." Jack makes a decision immediately. It is a life-or-death chess game. He orders a vehicle to escape through the subway tunnel, with a getaway car waiting on the other side. At the same time, he instructs another team to start a fight in a bar on the opposite side of the city as a diversion. The police are fooled. Units are redirected. The road clears. His men escape. For 3 days, Jack does not sleep. Fueled by black coffee and cigarettes, he coordinates operations street by street. It is brutal. If low-level members are arrested, he lets them take the fall to protect the rest of the organization. Finally, the rival boss flees the city. The war is over. Jack wins. He enters the meeting room. 20 men in expensive suits stand and bow deeply, not daring to sit until he does. He becomes the second in command. The boss is king, Jack is the prime minister. He runs the daily operations like a CEO of a multi-million-dollar enterprise. He looks at financial reports. Construction crews in the north are delaying payments. Casinos in the south are hiding revenue. He tolerates no excuses. He throws a heavy glass ashtray against the wall and says calmly, "Fix it, or I'll send someone who can." No one dares resist. Jack controls all money flows, decides which politicians receive donations, and which real estate projects move forward. He manages thousands of members nationwide. His most important role is to act as a shield. When the police investigate, Jack stands in front. If evidence is found, he says, "It was me." He takes full responsibility, goes to court, and serves 10 years in prison so the boss can remain free. He never hesitates. Everyone knows Jack is the heir to the throne, but he is not the boss. Not yet. 20 men kneel with their heads down, afraid to look at him. Jack has done it. He becomes the head of the organization, the highest leader. Now he is like a ghost. He never touches cash. Layers of intermediaries stand between him and any criminal activity. He does not need to shout. His words alone carry enormous weight. He gives a quiet order to the second in command. 3 days later, a rival disappears without a trace. He meets other gang leaders, dividing territories across the country like pieces of a cake. He decides who prospers and who collapses. But he never finds peace. He cannot trust anyone. Even his closest allies may want his position. A special police task force exists solely to capture him. He cannot go to parks or ordinary stores. He lives in a heavily guarded mansion surrounded by high walls and surveillance. He has become a prisoner in his own kingdom. There is no retirement, no escape. He will remain on this throne until the very last day of his life. He chose this life. Or perhaps this life chose him.